For many people, buying real estate in Los Angeles is just, well, crazy. The prices are high, the process is ridiculous, and good luck getting an offer accepted. But how does buying real estate in Los Angeles compare to other places around the world, like, I don't know, Europe? Well, unfortunately, I didn't go to Europe because COVID, but I did chat it up with some real estate agents in London, Amsterdam, and Berlin to, well, talk about our differences. The results fascinating. For example, I thought a 3% interest rate in Los Angeles was like ridiculously low. In Amsterdam, they're like, "Aw, that's cute." So come travel with me on the trip that I never took as I summarize my conversation with these extremely knowledgeable real estate agents and point out some of the key differences in buying real estate in Los Angeles compared to London, Amsterdam, and Berlin coming up. First stop, the UK London, where we have the beautiful and talented Ugo Arinzeh, a successful real estate agent in London who's originally from the United States. Now, some of the things that stood out in our conversation: one, the market. While prices in Los Angeles in the past year have gone up by about 15%, in London, let's just say Brexit didn't really help, with the current annual increase being around 3%. Now, for some, this sounds bad. For others, this sounds like cha-ching, opportunity. Now, while it may be a great time to buy in London right now, the buying process for the buyer, well, kind of sucks. Unlike Los Angeles, where the seller pays the commission for their agent and the buyer's agent, and the two agents go at it fiercely, fighting on behalf of their client's interests to the death. Just kidding, no one dies. In London, buyers are pretty much left to fend for themselves against the mighty claws of the seller's agent. Just kidding, they don't have claws. But the point is that a buyer's agent is not really common in London. And while one agent representing both parties is possible in Los Angeles, it's not really recommended. And as we'll see shortly, in some countries, it's actually illegal. But in London, Ugo, along with a few other agents, are fixing this and actually being trailblazers in the process by offering buyer representation. And despite buyers having to pay for this service, which is about 1 to 3% of the purchase price, Ugo has been extremely successful representing buyers as more and more people recognize the importance of proper representation. Now, on the mortgage side, while most buyers in Los Angeles run for the hills at the thought of an adjustable rate mortgage, in London, these mortgages are actually kind of common, with maybe 2 to 5 years being fixed and then adjustable after that. The 30-year fixed mortgage doesn't really exist in London. And while Los Angeles has property taxes, London has stamp duty. So like on $1 million house, property taxes in Los Angeles are about $12,000 a year. Now, translated from pounds to dollars, in London, stamp duty would be about $36,000 a year, rough estimate, subject to a bunch of factors. But the cool thing is that stamp duty is a one-time payment. It's kind of like a sales tax. The part that sucks is that it's due at the time of purchase, on top of closing costs and down payment. But like long term, subject to, well, a bunch of factors, you could potentially be better off paying a one-time stamp duty in London than annual property taxes in Los Angeles, which are just ridiculous. But with that, we say goodbye to London. And if you're interested in knowing more about the London real estate market from a true professional in this market, Ugo has an awesome YouTube channel with tons of content. I'll leave her information in the description below. Next stop, the city of Amsterdam in the Netherlands. Our wonderful resource here is Barry Burgemeester, a talented and very funny real estate agent in Amsterdam with more than 20 years of experience. So as far as the market, I tried to show off to Barry how the real estate market in Los Angeles is like really hot. I'm like, oh yeah, well we have properties like getting like 5 or 7 offers. He pretty much laughed at me and was like, yeah, there's something wrong if we don't get like 15 to 16 offers. Oh yeah, well, our houses are selling for like $100,000 above the asking price. He's like, yeah, that's nice. Try $500,000. So yeah, if you're a buyer in Los Angeles complaining about the market and not getting your offer accepted, try going to Amsterdam, where multiple offers above the asking price is pretty much standard practice. The thing is, Amsterdam has a shortage of houses, and not helping is the fact that only about 30% of real estate in Amsterdam is privately owned. On top of that, it also seems like it's common strategy in Amsterdam for sellers to list below value to incite multiple offers. And unlike London and similar to Los Angeles, a buyer's agent is more common in Amsterdam. In fact, unlike Los Angeles and London, it's actually kind of illegal for the seller's agent to represent both parties in Amsterdam. I find this interesting because I've always had a personal policy against dual agency or one agent representing both parties because, well, someone's getting screwed. So it's interesting that a whole country believed in this so much that they actually made it a policy. Now, unlike Los Angeles, in Amsterdam, the fee for the buyer's agent is paid by the buyer, which can be about 1 to 2% of the purchase price. In Los Angeles, it's paid by the seller and is about 2.5% of the purchase price. I mean, for all the complaining that buyers in Los Angeles do, they're actually pretty spoiled. Buyers in Amsterdam have to pay most of the closing fees, including a transfer tax of about 2% of the purchase price, which can amount to about $20,000 on a $1 million purchase, on top of the down payment and other closing costs. But before you start saying, oh, poor buyers of Amsterdam, no. A buyer in Amsterdam can get a 20-year fixed mortgage with an interest rate of about 1.5% and a 30-year fixed mortgage for really not that much more, which is ridiculous and unheard of in Los Angeles. But with that, we say goodbye to Amsterdam. And if you're interested in knowing more about the Amsterdam real estate market from a person who actually knows it, Barry is an amazing resource with tons of English and funny content on his YouTube channel and website. I'll leave his information in the description below. Next stop, Berlin, Germany, where we have another outstanding and knowledgeable resource, Eliot von Hartitzsch. Originally from New Zealand, Eliot is a successful real estate agent and property investor in Berlin. As far as the market is concerned, while multiple offers are not as crazy as some parts of Los Angeles and Amsterdam, Berlin has come a long way in the past 10 years with a median price increase of almost 200%. That's a lot higher than most neighborhoods in Los Angeles. And despite this, Eliot still thinks that real estate in Berlin is undervalued. Interestingly, most people in Berlin are renters, with only about 20% of people owning their home. In Los Angeles, it's closer to around 50%. Historically, tenants have had it so good in Berlin with a bunch of government protections that they didn't really have much incentive to want to buy. But limited rental inventory and skyrocketing rental rates are now having many tenants rethink their situation and wanting to buy. But buying is not always easy in Berlin. Like in London, the buyer typically has to resort to the seller's agent. They don't really get an agent. But not only does a buyer not get their own agent, they also kind of have to pay for the seller's agent, who is hired by the seller, and that commission can be about 6% of the purchase price. Now, fortunately for buyers in Berlin, they did just pass a law which limits the maximum amount that they can pay to 50% of the commission. But yeah, still pretty brutal since you're paying for an agent you didn't even choose and doesn't even represent you. But don't feel bad for the buyers of Berlin. The market is booming. They'll definitely get their money back. And like the other cities that we just visited, recurring property taxes in Berlin are also pretty insignificant compared to the ridiculousness of Los Angeles. But there is the equivalent of a transfer tax also paid by the buyer, which can amount to about 6% of the sales price. So like a $500,000 property, that's like $30,000 on top of the down payment and closing costs. So while buyers in Los Angeles are crying their pretty little eyes out because their closing costs are like 2 to 3% of the purchase price, German buyers are happily, okay, maybe not happily, but still paying around 11% in closing costs. But again, don't feel bad for the Germans. Their prices are skyrocketing. They can also get interest rates in the ones and don't have to pay like $12,000 a year in property taxes. So yeah, the Germans are more than fine. But now it's time to say goodbye to Berlin. For more information on the real estate market in Berlin from a professional who actually works there, Eliot is an amazing resource who speaks English. In case you don't speak German, I'll leave his information in the description below. In summary, interesting stuff. Pros and cons. In Europe, most buyers have to pay agent commissions. In Los Angeles, it's paid by the seller, although I wouldn't go to the extent of saying that it's free for the buyer. In Los Angeles, the buyer's commission is kind of already built into the sales price. In Europe, buyers have higher or high transfer taxes, but don't really have annual property taxes, or at least not in any significant way as compared to Los Angeles. In a way, it can almost be said that the costs associated with buying a house in Europe are higher than Los Angeles, but the cost of maintaining a house is cheaper in Europe. I mean, in Los Angeles, technically you can have a house that's fully paid off and still lose it because you can't afford the property taxes. But again, pros and cons. Let me know what you guys think. If you bought a property in another country, what differences did you find? What did you like? What did you not like? Put it in the comments below. And again, a big thank you to Ugo, Barry, and Eliot for helping me put this together. And disclaimer, this video is a very superficial coverage of real estate in these countries. For more information, reach out to one of these professionals. And by the way, my name is Daniel Rangel. I'm a real estate agent in Los Angeles. If I can be of any help, it would be an honor. In the meantime, if you like this video, make sure to hit like or subscribe. But either way, thanks a bunch for watching and have an awesome day.